And I think some of the things that slow down recovery are the fact that there are so many stigmas around porn specifically and a porn addiction. Martin, did this stigma slow down your recovery?
Absolutely, Jennifer. I mean, really, who talks about men that are abused? You know, who talks about, and when you have a look at the whole porn addiction thing, what makes it worse is that the cliche is that, oh, everybody's doing it. You know, everybody is doing it, and therefore it's okay. So it's a big cliche, and it's kind of justified in a sense. You know, well, all my friends are doing it. It's okay just to look at it, you know, a little bit. But when I stopped drinking, I didn't have any sort of easy coping mechanism, as I call them, and porn became the next best thing. So I then started, instead of drinking, I then started spending sort of 3 to 5 hours a day on the internet and not being present in my family, with my wife and that sort of thing. So it seemed quite odd to me, and I could never understand it, is that I would rather be in front of a computer screen on my own rather than down the passage in the bedroom with my wife. It was something that I couldn't even understand. It was just, you know, people laugh at you. How can you be a porn addict? There's a need there that is so hard to explain. It's just I think for me it was a case of I was so down on myself. My self-esteem was so low that it was easier for me just to go on the internet and not have to deal with the real day events that happened, with my wife. I didn't have to interact with the ladies on the screen. I didn't have to talk to them. And I could have whatever I wanted tonight, you know. I could have big blondes, or I could have petite brunettes, or I could have all three at the same time. It didn't matter. It was all there at my beck and call. And, I say one of the best days for me was when I learned to have an intimate emotional connection, and I was 47. Kids are supposed to be learning this sort of thing in their early 20s, late teens, and I learned to have a one-on-one relationship with somebody when I was 47. You know, up until that point, when I slept with a woman, it was a case of I was going to bed with at least 15 other people. You know, I had all these images running through my head that helped me cope with this relationship. I didn't have to deal with it, and I couldn't get excited about sex because it just wasn't there for me. I needed the porn to cope with it and to deal with it.
Cheryl, is this a story you hear often?
I think most of our clients, male and female, almost verbatim say what Martin is saying. They are terrified of intimacy. They don't know how to do it. It was never taught to them. It was never demonstrated. And you don't need to be intimate with drugs and alcohol, and you don't need to be intimate with the computer. It's the pathway of least resistance. So it's, what is going to be effective quickly to make me feel better. And thinking about, like, I'm struggling, I'm neglecting my wife down the passage, I'm neglecting my schoolwork, I'm neglecting my family, that doesn't come up in active addiction. They become aware in recovery. But sadly, yes, I think Martin is almost like mirroring what thousands of people are going through around the world.
And Martin mentioned what his road to recovery was like. Cheryl, can you let us know what your experience has been with recovery?
In Johannesburg, tragically, we do not also have any support groups. So like at our treatment center, we try and do specific treatment for recovery from sex and porn addiction. There are no 12-step groups, to my knowledge, that are currently running in Joburg that are healthy and effective. So most of it is done in basic treatment facilities and a good therapist, somebody who understands the dynamics of addiction, but also can see that it comes from a place of childhood trauma. I think a lot of treatment centers just focus on the addiction. They don't really realize that it stems from years and years and years and years of abuse. I like to use addiction as, I use a terminology that it can be seen as a gift because it brings about the opportunity to heal. A lot of survivors of childhood trauma or any kind of abuse, men and women, don't necessarily go for help. They're so ashamed, they're too embarrassed, they'll forget about it, it'll go away. Then they want to know why they're working too much. Maybe their alcohol consumption is increasing. To wind down, they're watching a bit of porn, and then want to know why they're waking up in a crack house with a couple of prostitutes, no dignity, no cash, no family. How does it get to that? It's a tragic illness. But I think it's time that we get rid of the stigma, because it's democratic. Anybody is susceptible to porn addiction and sex addiction.
Mm.